Hi everyone, welcome to our latest instalment of ALF Talks, where we talk sales and marketing in the media, marketing and advertising world. So today we are going to be discussing standing out in 2021, and I am joined by two brilliant guests. I've got Debra Sharron, who is the founder and lead training at Media Sales Training, and Emma Thwaite, new business director at the Kite Factory. Now I'm raring to go to start talking about this, but before I do, one thing I would mention is we do have a Q&A box. Please feel free to use it, and we'll try to get to any unanswered questions at the end of the webinar. So I'm going to jump straight in and come to you, Debra. Hi.
Hey there. Hi.
So look, you are talking and training and coaching salespeople full time. So when I say standing out is a challenge in 2021, what is it that you've been hearing from people in terms of that being a challenge?
Well, I think it's obviously been a challenging year for everybody. And the first thing that I hear is it's a challenge just getting hold of your clients and your prospects and having conversations. Where are they? How do I find people? It used to be okay because I could call their office or I had their work email and I knew it would be where they were located. But now there's great mystery, and the number one challenge is actually being able to find the right phone number and have the conversation. So it sounds very obvious, but I think that in itself has meant that sales professionals have had to become like private investigators to try and determine where their prospects actually are. So that's probably number one challenge. The other thing I hear a lot of is that email just doesn't seem to be cutting it. That we're sending out loads of emails, but getting a response, getting traction seems to get harder than ever this year. So, that one channel that has been many people's default is now not quite as effective. And maybe the third thing is actually our mindset. Our mental expectation of how a conversation might go. If I'm lucky enough to engage with a prospect, they're going to tell me their budget's been cut. They're going to tell me that everything's being replanned. So sellers are often going into a conversation expecting a negative outcome. And when you then hear it, you kind of go, yeah, I was kind of expecting that. So there's a cycle of negativity, which I think we've all had to struggle with to try and become more positive and optimistic. And that has a knock-on effect on confidence. And I suppose salespeople have enjoyed being part of teams and bouncing off each other and getting ideas from one another across the desk. And clearly the challenge of working from home and keeping your energy high has been difficult for everybody. So as with all salespeople, when things are going well, we feel fabulous. And when they're tough, it's really easy for your confidence to nosedive. So just that mental positivity, I think is a real challenge for many, many people in this particular role.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, standing out has always been a challenge for salespeople, right? But particularly the last 12 months, it's just intensified everything, hasn't it? Completely. How do I get hold of people? How do I keep my spirits up? How do I stay resilient, which is probably a key word for 2020.
Very much so.
And when you're looking to stand out beyond everybody else, if you can't even get in front of people in the first place, it's really hard work.
It is.
Yeah. And I mean, Emma, so you had a pretty good year last year, which was great to hear. So what was your secret then? Please tell us.
I wish there was one kind of secret. I think from the Kite Factory's point of view, I think as an agency, we're quite a human agency and we really understand the pressures that clients are going through. We get very close to our clients, and client servicing is really important to us. So I think for me as a new business person, when lockdown first happened, it was more about how can we put our arm around our clients and also our new business prospects as well, and say we're here to help rather than to continue try and do new business and propagate new business messaging. It was much more about, this is happening now. We can give you information about what the consumers are doing, what's happening in the media marketing space. We can support you. And that's really what we did very quickly, is we drew up a really strong content plan very marketing led. All the things we were putting out there were pieces of value, information with value on it. And, you know, that was really important to me for the relationships that I had built in 19 and now I was bringing through into 2020. It was now to show that we could deliver value and we weren't just asking for opportunities to get pitches and briefs and things like that. It was talking to them in a human, personal way, really.
I suppose that's another kind of theme, isn't it? Of the last 12 months, this kind of human empathy, I would say, kind of side, whereas that traditional outlook, I suppose, in terms of sales, you know, that traditional approach has kind of weakened a bit, and it's actually, you know, we've all been, you know, through something together. Everybody's got their challenges. It's not as simple as just being able to get in front of somebody and ask for a piece of business, because they've got a whole set of new challenges themselves, and trying to actually understand that, you know, I suppose.
I think definitely. I think from a new business perspective, what Debra talked about with having that empathy for our clients that we're talking to is what is going on in their lives. You know, how many kids are they homeschooling? Has half their team been put on furlough? That's a real challenge. When we first went into this lockdown, was could we actually speak to clients? Were clients even there anymore? And certainly emailing, you were emailing clients, you were getting lots of out of offices, lots of points of I'm on furlough, and you were often left with the most senior people in the business left there picking up emails and all the communications that was coming into a whole marketing team, which could be 25 to 30 people. So yeah, for me, I learned a lot at the very beginning of lockdown about how I should start talking to people, and the level of people that I was talking to is we were getting responses very quickly from senior people and having very senior conversations, but it was all about how can I help their lives be a bit easier? How can we support them more? What can we do? You know, take away, they're doing 3 people's jobs during some of the furlough height period. So yeah, it was really important to think about them on a personal level.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose, you know, with that change, you've got to try and develop new ways of working. ALF's currently running a survey with ALF users just about, you know, kind of key selling elements. And at the moment, the survey is currently saying that 63% of ALF users thought that traditional sales methods were becoming less effective. So I wanted to kind of ask you about this, Debra, and in terms of that kind of, you know, traditional formats, what's changed?
It's interesting. I wonder what people interpret by traditional, because I suppose I, as a sales trainer, would say traditional sales structures are more important now than ever. So, you know, I think when people follow a real process for thinking of a strong opening, high value kind of opening to a conversation, when they've thought about their questioning skills, when they've really thought about how to create a relevant and tailored pitch, and my favorite, when they've really thought about closing and trial closing, those principles of good practice selling, I don't think they've changed at all. I think they're more important than ever. But I think the methods of achieving those things have probably changed quite considerably. So, for example, I think probably the biggest shift is that we should be thinking mobile first. You know, that's going to be the key to being able to open conversations. And sales managers and sales directors for years have talked about trying to get their salespeople on the phone and having conversations, human conversations rather than emails. Well, I think that's absolutely come to the fore. And just getting comfortable. If a client's got their mobile telephone number in their signature on their email, not putting up any barriers about using that. And maybe using it for a text, or heaven forbid, a WhatsApp message, you know, just realizing that most people's mobile phone, do you find that too, Emma? Most people's mobile is within arm's reach.
Totally agree.
And therefore that's a shift. Yeah.
And you know, and you've got the beauty of WhatsApp now and texting, Debra. Are you finding that that's quite useful? I mean, it's something, I think it's when a client is engaged with me, I wouldn't probably go in cold on either of those media, but it's when I'm having a good conversation with clients and, you know, the email necessarily isn't getting through, then it's just dropping them a quick message and seeing where they're at and what's going on, you know, it's really useful.
Yeah, I think it's just having that broader idea. I think we might go on to talk about all the different communication channels that we should be embracing, but that's a shift. And I think it's one to welcome. I guess another way in which traditional methods, you could say, aren't working is we can't go and have a coffee. I mean, I've always been a bit rude about this, but a coffee and a catch up with a client or a contact, that's off the table now. So, how do you have those more informal conversations rather than just fixing up a Zoom meeting at an appointed time and scheduling all of your interactions? So I think we've got to be brave enough to be spontaneous and to jump on the phone and to try and engender some of that spontaneity, even in a time when we can't do some of the traditional things that we're very used to, particularly in the media world, where there's a lot of hospitality and a lot of, the social side of things that we all miss so much. That has been a shift in trying to think about ways of replicating or changing that.
I think you can bring that social side in though, Deborah. I don't know how you feel. I mean, some of my senior leadership team and myself, we do try and communicate with intermediaries, clients that we've been talking to for a long period of time, people that are friends of the agency, other creative agency partners. I mean, I am trying to make people carve out the day, a time in their day to have those conversations, which you're right, they would have naturally had. They would have naturally gone for a lunch on a Friday afternoon or down the pub for a pint. And, in media, that's, where you live and breathe to an extent on a Friday afternoon. So I've encouraged people to make that time, really. And it is working well. It's giving them the permission to say, my working day doesn't have to be 100% full on from X to Y, completely focused on work. Business development is a social thing.
Absolutely. I think that's such an important part of it. And actually, I think that's where video meetings have really been a very exciting experience in the last 12 months. I mean, I know for years I've talked to people about having video calls and meetings with clients, and everyone's rolled their eyes and said, oh, no, not for me, not for me. But actually, a bit like, as you were saying earlier, Emma, we've got more access to people and we're getting to learn about them in the round. I mean, it's fabulous when you see the cat walk across the screen or you meet family. So you can actually have a much more human, real relationship.
Connection.
And people are much more open, I think, if you are able to create those meetings. So maybe the rhythm of the sales process has changed slightly. I like to call it the drumbeat. And actually having more short interactions face to face is a real shift. And that's a change from our traditional way of working. But I see that as a really positive change. I think that there's a lot of opportunity to really engage in a much wider way. And I suppose linked to that, the other shift is that our clients' businesses are changing very quickly. They've gone through lots of pivots, restructures, and therefore maybe one of the other major changes that as sellers we've got to be thinking about is selling to groups rather than to individuals. If we've had a strong relationship with one person or a couple of people within an organization, or if we're trying to bring a new relationship, we've got to be broader than just thinking about that one or two people. We've got to try and create a little bit more of an understanding of the decision-making unit and understand where decisions are actually being made, which may not be in the traditional places. Maybe it's not marketing, but it's actually other departments, other areas of the client organization that will be involved in the decision-making process.
That, I think that's quite an interesting
really interesting
point.
thought that.
Go ahead, Emma.
Sorry, really interesting thought that you raised, Deborah, there is where are the decisions being made? And we've always known that procurement departments and procurement is rising and has been on the rise for ages. And procurement is an absolutely invaluable place for a business development person to start to communicate and understand what makes the organization tick and what is their cycle of review and how do they review. But I think now, as clients have smaller marketing teams, as their budgets have been cut, as the money that they've got to play with is less because of everything that's gone on in the last sort of 12 months, I think procurement has become more and more influential and more important. And I think business development people and CEOs, managing directors of agencies and sales people should be talking to procurement people more than ever before. Because I think now we can really understand how those clients, as you said, Amanda, have pivoted, have changed their business, what now is the core focus, and what do they need from their agencies. And procurement people will be in those conversations at the boardroom table, understanding what the clients particularly need.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. And that's part of that kind of reframing where we have the conversations. I also would kind of think that perhaps we need to be aiming higher in terms of the seniority of the people that we want to be targeting. So, I mean, ALF is brilliant at helping to navigate that decision-making unit, but I'm seeing quite a lot of people who are really interested in new business, aiming really right to the top. You know, rather the person who deals with, who looks after, or who is in the marketing day-to-day function, literally trying to elevate the conversation and look at the business benefits that corporations can offer. And that's really something that a very wide group of people within a client organisation might have an appetite to investigate. So it's just shifting where we take the conversations and the nature of the channels that we use to have the conversations.
Yeah.
And that's interesting what you say, Deborah, about, you know, aim high, because one thing that we have heard is actually, you know, those key decision makers are somewhat more available now than they ever have been. So, you know, and we actually asked that question on our survey as well. And, you know, people were saying, yes, I'm actually getting in front of these people that typically I've just, you know, not been able to reach. So, I mean, Emma, has the experience, you know, from an agency point of view, that new business process, is that changing, or is it pretty much staying the same?
I think there's always the cycle of the opportunity to meet, the credentials, the Q&A sessions, the negotiating for 6 or 7 months, keeping top of mind, and then hoping that a brief comes out, and then the new business pitch cycle. But I think things are speeding up a lot more, and I think clients are looking at their existing roster of agencies they have, and they're thinking, am I fit for purpose for them, and are they fit for purpose for me? And I think the clients are looking at projects in a different light now as well. They're looking at a lot more project-based work, and if they have a need, they're going and they're asking agencies to respond very quickly. And also what I'm finding as well, and I don't know whether other people in agencies are, they're finding a lot of clients are coming back with, if I had X amount of money and Y amount of money, it's kind of give me some tiers, give me what a gold, silver and bronze proposal might look like. Because I think certainly last summer and into this autumn last year, there was still so much uncertainty about the business market as a whole. And so I think marketing directors and CMOs were hedging their bets to see what they could get for the money that they had in their marketing sort of plans. And if they did this, what would it achieve? So I think the cycle of new business hasn't changed. I think it's sped up a little bit, and I think there's more projects out there to be had.
Okay. Well, that sounds promising, I would say.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about value, which is obviously a word that is thrown around in sales a lot, because we know that we need to prove it, we need to have it, we need to make it available both to our existing clients and to our prospects. There's a quote that's stuck in my head about value, which is from my brother. I expect he stole it from somebody else. But he said to me earlier on in my kind of sales career, he said, don't wait to get paid before you start adding value. Add value and you will get paid.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
It's nice, isn't it?
Nice.
But I
Where
thought
did he steal that from?
I have to find out. But you know, I think that's quite relevant when we're looking at that big question of how do you actually stand out in 2021. Value has got to be a part of the answer. So I mean, Emma, how do you ensure that you're showing and giving value to your network and your prospects?
I think for us, and certainly at the Kite Factory, it goes back to that point of arm around the shoulder. What have we got in our armory that's useful to clients that can help them navigate change? What have we got in our armory? What experience have we got that can help them with any questions they have in terms of their marketing plans and pivoting, as you mentioned before? So certainly in 2020, we produced a lot of white papers. We produced a lot of webinars, opportunities to hear us and our clients talking about the problems that we're facing. And similar to this kind of session, it's learning, it's sharing our knowledge amongst our new business prospects and seeing how we can help them and offering them opportunities to talk to us really and engage with us. So I think 2020 for us was the year of content, but content that was really relevant to clients. You know, what is going on in the media marketplace? What are consumers doing at the moment? How have their habits changed? And that is offering something of value to a client. And then hopefully they will engage with us from a new business perspective as well. But it's giving them something of value first before we go in for the, we'd like to come and talk to you about who we are and what we do. I think gone are the days where that is really relevant anymore. It has to be wrapped up in relevancy and value to the client and client benefit.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think what I'm seeing a lot of is actually sales teams leading with insight rather than their product. So the consideration is, what could I teach my clients that our vantage point in the marketplace enables us to see that would be useful for them? And that's what I think gets you the attention of an organization, because actually in the world of media, you have this fabulous bird's eye view, not only of what your audience and your audience and readers might be doing, but also what other organizations are doing and how they're faring in the marketplace. So I think that you create value by actually offering neutral insight that has nothing to do with your product. You know, arguably, if a prospect wants to find out about your product, they can probably do that without having a conversation with you. They can go online and find out about what you do. But actually what you've learned, what you've understood about the marketplace widely is something that really does create value that actually a client might pay for if they weren't going to be getting it from your organization. So I definitely think that the opportunity to create value for clients is extremely rich at the moment. And I think the other part of value is that selling has now, I suppose you could rethink it as being problem solving. It's the ability to understand what are the challenges that organizations are facing, and then using your platform to be able to look at how those problems can be solved. So it's repositioning the dynamic between the buyer and the seller, so that actually if you are a person involved with business development, your expertise is leading the conversation. That you're actually, I'm really interested in the kind of power balance there, that you add value because you have an expertise which would be relevant to your customer.
I think that's really interesting to build on that point. I think what us agencies have, we have our people, we have our proprietary tools, but we also have the work, we have our case studies, we have what we've done. And I think so many agencies wrap their case studies up into, this was the business problem, this is what we did to solve it, and this is the results. And they kind of leave the conversation there. But actually what they should be talking about or finishing or wrapping it all together in, and this led us as an organization to learn this. And so therefore we've got that in our experience, and that experience is what we bring to you, Mr. Clients, you know, as the opportunity to work with us. So it's really experience in our case studies that sometimes gets lost. I think the storytelling is very much around business issues. What we did is a huge chunk, and then the results are kind of on the end as well. And you just think, but help the client understand what you learned from that experience and what you're bringing to them is really important.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. And all of that proof that you have, that evidence of your effectiveness, has got to be translated into the language that's meaningful to the client themselves. I think the other quick point about value, and it's a conversation that we often have in the training room around negotiation and pricing. It's really to have always in mind the value of your benefits relative to the cost of the activity that you might be pitching. So, you know, in the media world, we talk about rate cards and discounting and how you package pricing and offerings and all those sorts of things. But I think it's really the right time to be thinking about the actual deliverables of your solutions in the language of the client. So, you know, what is that cost that they're spending, that the price that you're asking them to pay? What does that look like relative to the benefits that your audience or your brand can bring to their organization? And it's a really good time for anyone in the sales world to relook at that dynamic between cost and value. And I think that, the organizations which are going to be most successful will be the ones that really feel confident about that dynamic, that paradigm, and that cost and value sit very comfortably next to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
I think for me as well, it's thinking about it in terms of the client's business themselves. That word value is a really important question to be asking any prospects that you're talking to, or you've taken a brief from, or you're pitching for. What value does you and your team need to drive, not only from this brief, but what value do you drive the organization? And I think that's a really interesting question to ask a client, and to hear what the clients come back with, because we all assume that we know, because they've written at the bottom of their brief, we want to deliver X. We think that that's what drives them. But actually, if you ask that question of what's the value, where does the value come from in your business, you get an interesting answer, and then you truly see where the value chain is.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, for people prospecting, let's say people looking at new business, when it comes to building value, I think one of the hardest things to do is when it's quite hard to get a response from somebody, or get in front of somebody initially. How can you start almost building value without never having a conversation with them, if that makes sense? I suppose, have there ever been any instances where you've been able to kind of do that, whether that be via particular channels or emails or case studies, where you've been able to kind of build that value prior to even having a conversation with them?
I think that's a very interesting question, because I think we're obliged to create the value before the conversation in order to get the conversation.
Exactly.
And whether you do that through LinkedIn, or you do it through an email, or you leave it to a voice note, it's, to my mind, it will always come back to delivering evidence and proof of your effectiveness. And Emma's talked about case studies. Anyone who's ever heard me talk about proof, roll their eyes, because I think testimonials are the single most powerful thing that you need to put in front of a new prospect. You need to have the words of an existing customer explaining the value they've derived out of a collaboration with you, to help open the door to a new conversation. And that's become really important. Often we gather those sorts of testimonials for a media pack or for the website, but actually to be really refreshing and gathering fresh advocates for working with you in terms of what you deliver, how many organizations you're working with, how many organizations are continuing to work with you. That sort of evidence-based selling, I think, gets you conversation. So I think you have to drip feed that kind of confidence building information through whichever channels are going to be most appropriate to build the trust, so that you can then open a conversation and really see how you can create specific value for an organization that you already know quite a lot about, because you've invested a lot of time and effort in truly understanding what their business challenges might look like before you have the conversation in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
And from a business development point of view, just to follow that a bit further in terms of testimonials, it's also referrals. I think 2020 taught us as an agency that delivering something of value to our existing clients, delivering something of value to new business prospects, making sure we're there to support them 24/7 in some instances, because some of our clients are charities that are, suffering a difficult period at the moment. That has come back in a positive way to us. There's been a lot of client referrals. There's been a lot of partner agencies, creative agencies that we work with that might be referring us to their clients or clients they're pitching for. It's very much, the landscape, I think, changed a lot in 2020 in terms of agencies working together. I mean, you saw the rise of the Land of the Independents, which the Kite Factory are part of. That would have never probably happened in any period in time other than extraordinary circumstances we went through last year. People joining together to deliver for clients, with cut budgets, but still wanting to go the extra mile for clients. And so client referrals is a really important area of any business development management kind of role, really, particularly managing directors, particularly CEOs. Talking to your clients, asking them, for referrals is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned there, Deborah, about drip feeding when you were talking about you know, how you can bring those testimonials together and build value before you've even kind of spoken to a prospect. And I think it would be quite good to talk about that kind of multi-channel approach, because that's another word that's thrown around a lot. But are you actually using a multi-channel approach, I suppose, is the big question. So I mean, Deborah, what is meant by that for a salesperson? And I suppose what do you see those key channels being in 2021?
Well, I don't think we've ever had as many choices as we've got now. And so, you know, it's all to play for. Depressingly, I read recently that it can take up to 18 times to actually get that conversation with a new prospect. So persistence was always important, but it's probably more important now than ever. But that doesn't mean pinging out an email 3 times a week and leaving endless voice notes. So creativity in that multi-channel approach, I think, is extremely important. And I think LinkedIn, which I know you want to talk about, I think is now center to this. It used to be something that some people did, but, you know, it's become center in that whole conversation. So being able to have the confidence to connect with somebody that you've never spoken to before in a way that's going to be meaningful to them and personalized seems to be a very useful stepping stone to creating a shared and warm kind of introduction that can eventually come out of LinkedIn and turn into a human conversation. So I think LinkedIn is an extremely important platform for both prospecting and networking and just sharing that insight and the information. And social media channels generally, you know, sending direct messages or personal messages on whichever platform your client might be active on is a very important way to get onto their radar. I'm very old, so I still think the post works quite well. So, you know, if you're lucky enough to be able to find out where your client is, sending them something tangible, whether it's a magazine or a slice of cake or whatever it might be, I think is still very valuable. Seeking those video meetings, using video very creatively. I mean, using a piece of video to do your connection request on LinkedIn, or audio to leave the sound of your voice rather than just a typed message. Just being as broad across those different channels as we can possibly be. And then looking to have a walk in the park with a prospect, or, you know, the face-to-face in whichever limited way we're going to be able to manage it. I think the skill is to have a plan of action that has lots of different communication channels across a planned period of time, so that you almost have in your calendar a number of different rolling prompts of different ways that you might be able to interact or tap on the shoulder, as I like to say, the prospect, just to be able to keep that opportunity in play, so that when the time is right, you know, you're ready to be able to have perhaps the more formal conversation that turns into a pitch and hopefully a piece of business.
Yeah, that keep in touch strategy is really, really important. Because I think so many new business people, we have those initial conversations and then we are worried about what the next step is. We do the initial credentials meetings, we have the first Zoom meeting, we tell them about us, we tell them what we think about them, and then what do you do next? And I think, you know, so many people struggle with that, and it is really about keeping in regular dialogue going. It might be a piece of thought leadership which was more generic for a sector, or it might be that you've seen a new brand launch that's come through, or it might be actually that ALF sent you a notice that someone in the organisation has changed and moved. So you've got opportunities, touch points all the way along, but don't keep banging the same ones. So don't keep going email or voicemail, whatever. And the other thing, to build on what Deborah's talking about, there is so much choice out there, but think about what the clients are doing themselves. So if you see a client that's very active on LinkedIn, is liking a lot, posting a lot, then that's, you know, that's the channel that they most feel comfortable in, and that's the one you should probably talk to them through. You know, have a look. I have some clients that do like WhatsApp and that they do communicate me through that channel, but, you know, it's just finding, it's horses for courses and being perceptive to what your clients are doing. And I think the thing for me is, gone are the days of large mass blanket mailings. It's all about personal, really targeted emails out a day and stressing over what the content says, and you've got to have the golden bullet. But it is much more about addressing me and not just the generic hello or whatever it might be, actually talking to me as the client, and subject lines as well, particularly in email. You know, think about what you would click on, think about what you are interested in when you get emails through, what interests you. It's usually not, I can raise your ROI by 30%, come and talk to me. That's really not going to cut it. It's what's interesting and what's clickable.
Yeah, exactly. I had something quite interesting. A salesperson in an organization trying to sell ALF something a few weeks ago. And I kind of, received an initial kind of 2 generic emails, I'd say, in the first instance. I didn't even realize I had, like so many, because, sometimes you receive a lot of just the same thing. And then I received an email from them that had a video in the email that they had made to me. So this salesperson basically did a pitch on a video to ALF. And I got it and I was like, oh, what's this? And I watched the whole thing. And I thought, this is brilliant. This is so good. And, we've asked in the ALF survey, how many of you are using video messaging? And nobody is really. So, I'd probably use this as an opportunity to urge people to have a look at that, because in the same way, when we, in the past, when we said, let's do video calls before everything that happened last year, and there was that feeling of, oh, that feels uncomfortable. Actually, this could be the next big thing. And I've only ever received one of those.
Brilliant.
So, even that kind of feeling, I know they're readily available. There are multiple services that come at no cost that allow you to do this. I would definitely give that a bit of a test. And I think that could stretch, couldn't it? You can utilize that on LinkedIn. You can utilize that via email, even via phone. And it's a way to get yourself as a person across. And if we're talking about standing out, if nobody else is doing it, then maybe that might be one little tip.
That really is standout, because you're telling the story because it impressed you, and it was different to the other 150 emails that you may have received that day. And I mean, yes, I'm seeing, I'm sure you've seen these platforms as well, where actually, if you were sending a proposal, you could embed some video in that proposal. So you're talking it through to your client rather than having to read it through. I think, those are ways of just being able to look like you're thinking a little bit differently about how to bring your opportunity to life. That's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. So, we did want to kind of touch on social selling. As it is, and I know we've already brought up LinkedIn a little bit here, and listening to your prospects, as you said, and are they active? Is it a channel that they use, and kind of what do they do? We've actually had a question around LinkedIn, which is, LinkedIn, is it still effective to actually prospect through it? So I suppose I'm guessing yes from what you guys have said already, but what do you think, Deborah?
I definitely think yes, but I think you've got to really think about the tone. I think it's light touch, it's content first, and video content particularly. And I think it's just nurturing a relationship so that you create enough value to justify the conversation. I think where LinkedIn gets a bad reputation is when somebody connects with you with a kind of War and Peace pitch, which is all about them and the fabulous ways that they can save your existence. And that is such a turn off that you don't even want to consider even remembering their name. So getting, really understanding the tone and not being too impatient for getting the results from LinkedIn, I think is extremely important. This giving mentality, just sharing information and watching what people are talking about and becoming an active participant in those conversations. I think, that starts to grow the momentum, and learning for yourself, if you're posting content, what's building traction with your particular network? What do they find valuable and what do they find an absolute turnoff? And measuring and monitoring and experimenting. But that is where really high value connections and conversations really are taking place. But I think we've just got to have the right kind of approach to making it work properly. And also being very critical of your own profile, making sure that if you were to read your profile, you really clearly can see how you help organizations and the value that you bring. Many of us kind of came to LinkedIn and created a profile maybe to get a job. But actually, particularly if you're in sales and business development, make sure that the language and the tone of your profile is about helping your customers, not smashing your targets. Smashing your targets can be a bit of a turn off, but actually finding solutions and creating high value evidence-based opportunities, I think really builds credibility. And that's really what you want, visibility and credibility in that space.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And I think it's, for me, it's also about having that patience, which Deborah mentioned. Don't expect them to link back in with you immediately, accept your invitation to meet, etc., etc. I mean, don't go in for the hard sell. There's nothing worse than going, great, I'm going to link in with someone, then immediately go in for the 2-minute monologue on why you're the best person at doing this or the best company at doing this. I find also if there's people that I'm interested in or businesses that I'm interested, like their content, comment on their content. LinkedIn, they want to have a conversation. That's why they're there. So have a conversation with them, share their posts. Be active, be conscious and participate really. If you're just on LinkedIn being a very much a one traditional kind of salesperson hardcore, you won't get very far. One dimensions don't work on LinkedIn at all, I don't think.
No. And I think follow every single existing client that you're working with and all the prospects that you'd like to work with, so that your feed is really populated with the conversations that you'd like to be part of. LinkedIn gives you what you tell it you're going to be interested in. So you've got to be really making sure that you're triggering the right kind of content for you to be part of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
So we've talked about a lot. We've talked about a lot already. I can't believe it's almost 2:45. So, from everything we've talked about, so for people that are looking to stand out this year, I would love to hear what your guys' top tips are for people to start doing tomorrow. So please share your secrets. Deborah, what would you say to our audience in terms of the things that you've got to do to start standing out tomorrow?
Where do I start? I think I would say, first of all, be absolutely obsessed with your customer, with your client. Put them in the heart of everything that you do. If you're going to write an email, talk about them before you talk about yourself. Sometimes the stronger the brand that we represent, the stronger the proposition that we want to sell, the more we lead with that to get the attention in the first place. But I think to really stand out, you need to reverse that and always start with the client first. What are their needs, and then what are their timeframes, and how can perhaps you provide a solution that would help? I think be brilliant at the basics. I always maintain that asking the right questions is the single most important part of any new business development strategy. Questions are very boring for clients. They know the answers, so they're not getting much value. So do as much preparation as you can do before you get to the conversation. So the questions that we're asking now in February, March 2021 are really upgraded. They're really around what the client's experience has been over the last 12 months. How has their business changed? How have their customers changed? What are the challenges that they're facing? How can we help them? Really, really update the questions. And then I'd say aim to be super concise in every aspect of your sales practice. So if, the days of going through a PowerPoint deck, I think we've got to be very careful about that. I think that particularly in a video situation, interactivity is more important than presenting. So being able to create dialogue is really important. And I think this might be the year of the infographic. Getting that whole concept of your proposition and your recommendation and your proposal onto one single document. So the ability to be edited and creating concise representation, very important. And the final thing I would say is maybe lead the conversation with a solution already in mind. We used to, in selling, try to have a conversation to find a need and then come back with a presentation or a proposal of all the different ways we might be able to help that client meet that need. I'm not sure we're going to have much time for that anymore. So I think to stand out, sometimes it's helpful to say, I've looked at your business, I have an understanding of the challenges you're facing, and I've already started to think about how we might be able to help. And this is what it could look like. It's unlikely that that's going to be the end solution, but you look like you're efficient and that you're going to be respectful of the client's time. I think we've got to work in shorter time frames and be more concise with the way that we manage the whole sales cycle.
Yeah, I agree.
All great tips, Deborah. And Emma, any top tips from you that you?
I think from my perspective, it goes back to what's the client benefit into having a conversation with me? Why should they care? And I think we as agency people need to challenge ourselves, because we do exactly what Deborah just talked about there. We talk about ourselves far too much, and we don't talk about our clients or the clients we're trying to connect with enough. So putting them front and foremost at the conversation. I think for me also is persistence. You don't know what's going on in someone's life. You don't know how many balls they're juggling. You don't know kids homeschooling. You know, you've got husband and wife's teams working in the kitchen together. Not everyone's got a set up home office. You know, think about the difficulties that they're facing and be persistent, but not in a repetitive nagging way. Be persistent in the types of communication that you use, the types of outreach that you use. Think about the quality of the outreach that you're using as well. It needs to be, I hate the word, but it needs to be snackable. Gone are the days where you can send a 35-page PowerPoint presentation on a particular category and hope that someone's going to digest that 150-page PDF and actually get to the bottom of what you're actually trying to talk to them about. You know, make sure they're short and concise and it really gets to the point quickly and puts the clients front and foremost. So yeah, persistency, thinking about putting yourself in the client's shoes, and that human touch. You know, think about your subject lines, think about the words that you use on LinkedIn, think about the shares and the likes that you give to the clients that you want to talk to. And also the very final thing for me, really, which is we've not touched on too much, is but think about our community as new business people. You know, we talk to other agencies day in, day out. How can the other agencies work together? You know, is there a particular prospect that you and a creative agency really have your sights on? You know, go in with a joint proposal, make the decisions easier for the clients. And join up with your partner agencies as well. Talk to their clients, they talk to your clients, share stuff, share things on webinars, get people involved, you know, join up, the independents join together and you know, go after targets in that perspective. So that would be it for me.
All great tips. And I suppose I would add, I'm a bit obsessed with video at the moment, but I would add, you know, to try new things. And if something feels a bit awkward, it probably means not very many people are doing it. So give it a try.
That's a bit scary. Yeah.
And by that, I mean, you know, explore with video on email, video on LinkedIn, voice notes, using WhatsApp or text or all of these other mediums, because, you know, I think particularly from our conversation, there is that feeling of that traditional phone and email. This is my role. This is what I do all day has kind of, you know, that has shifted. And what we need to do is we need to explore all the channels available for us for communication, all the channels available for us to share and collaborate and, you know, share value. So it's just making sure, I suppose, that you're ticking all the boxes. Tick them out, tick them all, you'll be more likely to stand out in 2021. Fingers crossed. So look, we are running out of time now. I did want to ask you a question, Emma, which is, you know, on previous ALF Talks, we're always really keen to hear about the people that are supporting new business efforts and really going one extra step. So I did want to ask you, is there anybody that you would like to kind of nominate as standing out for you over the last 12 months when it comes to your role and new business?
I think it's the people that support the new business effort in the agency. There's so many of them, I guess, really at the Kite Factory that are day in, day out going the extra mile beyond their existing client work. But for me, Russell, who I work with, who's the new business exec at the Kite Factory, this is his first time in an agency. He's been with us for just over 12 months now. And, you know, going strength to strength, and he's the person that's in ALF day in, day out, looking at the new opportunities, reading all the content that you're sending, building all the databases for me. So I think Russell for me has been the star of the year at the Kite Factory from a new business perspective.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And Russell, if you're listening, Al's going to send you a little bottle of bubbly to say well done. You know, new business and sales can be a hard career and journey. So yeah, have a nice bottle of bubbly on us. So although we are running out of time, we have just had a couple of questions that I'd like to look at. One of them, in fact, we were chatting just before we started this webinar about this. So here's a question. Is it the end of the client lunch and breakfast, or is it likely the continuation? Is it the end of the client lunch and breakfast with the likely continuation of home working? So is it here to stay, home working, or are we going to be back out in front of clients again soon? What do you think? Deborah?
Deborah, do you want to take that first?
Okay. Well, I think that the world is full of people pontificating about what the future is definitely going to be looking like, and I'm not going to be one of them because I have no idea. But I think it's in our DNA, particularly in our particular sector, to really enjoy those parts of the job, and I am absolutely sure that they'll continue. I think that the way we work is going to be different inevitably. I think we've all realized that we can be productive in different places and spaces, and we need our interactivity with other people to work in the creative world that we do. So I'm sure that we'll still be seeing the whites of everybody's eyes and enjoying the finest eateries that we have to offer. But I don't want to pontificate too definitely about timelines, but I'm sure it's going to come back.
Exactly. And what do you think?
Yeah. I think it's really, I mean, I often sit on Zoom calls, not fantasizing, but certainly talking about all the lunches we have missed and the fact that we can't wait to have a lunch with a white tablecloth that doesn't involve, for me, traditionally baked beans all the time, because I'm cooking for my children as well every lunchtime, and cooking it myself it'd be lovely to go to a restaurant for that. But I think, making sure you put time in your week to catch up with your community, your partner agencies, your new business prospects, having a bit of a natter on LinkedIn or Zoom or whatever it might be, or actually picking up the phone. So I'd say don't wait until those breakfasts can go back in. Try something new, pick up the phone, have a conversation, have a gossip. That's what we're missing, I think, in some of the business development we're doing. We're taking it very seriously, that it's all about outreach and we have to get it 100% right. Sometimes it's just nice to check in with people and see what they're up to and how they're doing. So yeah, don't wait, but hopefully they'll be back soon.
Exactly. Fingers crossed. But we thought lockdown number 1 was going to last a fortnight originally, and it's a year later. So I suppose don't hold your breath and carry on pitching for the meantime. But hopefully you'll be able to do that in person in the near future. So look, we've come to the end of our session today. So I would like to thank you so much, Deborah and Emma, for joining us. Thank you everyone that's been leaving comments for us as we've been going along. If anyone in the audience is interested about the next topic of ALF Talks or would like to be involved, please let me know. Give me a call, send me an email, maybe even send me a video, get some practice in. But you can find my details on the website. It's been great talking to you guys. I could have done that all day long, but we should probably get back to work, right? So until next time, bye everybody, and thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.